In October 2014, Brazil announced that it was planning to run a fiber-optic cable in the Atlantic Ocean, 3,500 miles long, which will stretch from Fortaleza in northeastern Brazil to Portugal in Europe. The project was expected to cost $185 million. Ladies and gentlemen, placing fiber optic cable on the ocean floor does not mean that the cable is just thrown overboard and drops to the floor of the ocean. It is armored cable and has to be embedded in the ocean floor by a plow. On land, the laying of cable becomes a little more complex, since the cable has to pass over other infrastructure, roads, drains, pipes, electrical cables, water pipes, natural gas pipes, sewage pipes, just to name some. The fiber optic cable to Brazil, which was supposed to establish a high-speed internet capability from Georgetown to Latam and then to Brazil, began in 2011 and was supposed to be completed by 2013. After spending $32 million of the Guyanese taxpayers' money on this project, it now appears that the project has collapsed because of technical issues and incompetence. The Kaiju News tells us that it appears certain now that billions of dollars have gone down the drain unless the government finds a way to rescue the venture. According to a government source close to the project, continuous breakage of the cable has left the project in limbo. Ladies and gentlemen, it is inevitable that the cable would sustain massive damage since it was not buried deep enough to protect it and just rainfall alone was exposing it. And vehicles trying to negotiate the trail in wet weather were driving on the cable in some places. At creeks, etc. along the way, the cable was simply thrown onto trees across the creeks. It was a disaster. The Kaiju News reported time and time again that the deadlines have been pushed back. It was indicated by Kaiju News that initially little thought went into the project, as government itself reported that cables were not of the correct lengths. Independent supervisors hired to monitor the project were reportedly fired. It was reported that government had even resorted to foreign help in moving the cable project forward. But they did not do so. What they have done to rectify this problem is to sell the taxpayers of this country down the drain and remove it from public view by literally giving it away to a contractor named DAX Construction, a small firm which has offices in Eccles, East Bank, Demerara. In a press interview on the 29th of April this year, Dr. Luncheon highlighted that the undertaking did not go to public tendering since government was not paying for a service. Rather, the agreement was to have the cable rehabilitated and maintained in exchange for partial use by and concessions to DAX Contracting Services. You don't need public tendering if you don't have to pay, Dr. Luncheon said. Yes, you do that. You have to offer it and see who else wants to do it without establishing a new entity in the communications industry. Since by virtue of giving them bandwidth in this cable, you are in fact allowing them to get into the telecommunications industry, since you can't give them the bandwidth and then tell them later that they can't use it for commercial purposes. So at this stage, let me sum up the problem which we have uncovered so far. One, the person in charge of this massive project was Alexei Ramotar. Here is what we know about him. He clearly got the job because he's the president's son. Just out of school, has no real managerial experience, has never been in charge of any work of this magnitude, and is earning, according to our information, $10,000 per month. In January this year, 2015, he relayed the following to the public. I, for one, am engaged in negotiations, but I have to be hesitant in these days of prorogation. I am involved in discussions with a local firm and one from a neighboring country to conclude the rehabilitation of the existing cable that traverses the over 200 kilometers from its entry point in Latam to its termination here at Castellani in Georgetown. But in so saying, the project is obviously in need of being remedied. Is this why we ended up with DAX? Did Ramotar's son remedy add another disaster to the one he had already created? As a result of the inexperienced persons executing this work, including and probably especially the contractors, the cables were very badly laid down. The cost has been enormous. The 200 kilometers, according to young Ramotar, which runs from Castellani House to Letem, has cost us $32 million. This is 600% more than the 3,500-mile cable from Brazil to Portugal, which will only cost $185 million. 4. The local contractors were totally incapable of doing this job properly, and the results were disastrous, just as the Skeldon factory was. We in the business saw it would fail from the very beginning. The cable was installed in such a shallow manner by men with shovels that rainfall alone was exposing it. Why we did not employ an overseas contractor is beyond me. The Brazilians, for example, installed their cable which would link Letem with Manaus on poles and did not try to bury it in the ground. The opposition has already rightly made a statement informing the PPP that they will not be honoring this ridiculous undertaking to DAX. If the digging is in soft areas without too many underground encumbrances, the cost of laying cable is low, especially if the cable is less than 1 inch thick in diameter. From £5 per meter to £100 per meter, depending on where you are going and what disruptions you are incurring. Well, let's for a moment use these numbers and double the lowest figure to £10 per meter, since there would be absolutely no encumbrances along the ground from Linden to Letem for the entire distance of 200 kilometers. There will be no water lines, electrical installations, sewage pipes, etc. The cost, therefore, would be a little over $3 million US, not $32 million US. And to pay this amount and fail is monstrous stupidity, and not the Skeldon. A cable plow-equipped tractor for fiber optic installation is shown in the picture you are seeing now. Only the contractor who installed cable from Georgetown to Linden is reported to have used some sort of mechanical tool to install the cable in the ground. All the rest of the Linden-Letem road was installed by men with shovels. Ridiculous. One of these machines can dig a trench as deep as 42 inches, and the cable we are using for this project is not thick, around 3/4 of an inch, so it's less than 1 inch thick. Caps and drive units, such as those which are recommended for fiber optic cable placement by plow, are suitable for fiber optic cable with a diameter of 1 inch or less. Why wasn't one contractor with this tool and the experience to use it employed to do this job? These machines have been around since the 60s, laying ordinary pipe, ordinary cables. It's not as if it's something new. The people responsible for this must be dismissed, and the contractor who took out money to install it should be the ones to fix the problem for free. And this example is about Ramotar and his son alone. Who knows what disasters are occurring daily with the PPP second generation occupying major positions at some very fancy salaries in government with no experience of wasting our tax money.